In confusion and uncertainty, there emerges a guiding light, a beacon that cuts through the darkness. Welcome to Beacon of Truth with your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beacon of Truth. I am your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and you're listening on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. So great to be here with you from the Philippines. I'm having a great time here. Love being back here. Very, very Catholic country. And, one of the things that's interesting on this particular trip is that they are starting, the bishops of the Philippines just approved to start a permanent diaconate program. Well, eventually I like to get rid of that term because all priests are still deacons, right? I mean, so once you're ordained, you're always a deacon, no matter whether you're going to be a priest or not, but they're going to have a diaconate program for men who are not going on to the priesthood, so that's very exciting. It's been very interesting. I've been to the Philippines. It's my fifth trip, and I've deaconed in, I think, every country that I've been to visiting. I've served as deacon except for the Philippines because they don't have deacons. I mean, they have priests, and then they have instituted acolytes. So these are men who serve at the altar, again, as acolytes, kind of like altar servers and things like that, but they don't have deacons. So I'm hoping that on this trip, I actually get to serve as deacon at the altar. Again, that's a model they're not used to, but they're opening themselves up more now to having deacons in the life of church. So I'm very, very excited about that. And hopefully while I'm here, I'll get a chance to talk maybe with a bishop or two about the program and see if I can provide any help or assistance. I mean, I did write a book called Our Life in Christ, the handbook for Catholic deacons. And hopefully if there's anything I could do to assist them as they begin this process of forming men to be deacons, I'd be more than willing to help out in any way that I can. So I'm enjoying myself very much here. I have not been caving into my food temptations for the Filipino food. Some of my favorite cuisine in the entire world is right here in the Philippines. But you know what? I've been on this journey for so long now. I'm just used to it, and I'm not being tempted. And I allowed myself a cheat day. So one day this week, I'm going to just indulge and not think about it. But again, that's only one day. I'm not going to gain 100+ pounds back in by eating one meal in celebration of my time in the Philippines. And plus, I see it. I also see it as an insult. If I don't partake in the culture and experience the culture again through the food and through the music, but in this particular case through the food, I think that might be insulting. I don't want to insult anyone. Who am I to come to their country and insult them by not eating their amazing food? So almost like I have to, partake, so I can immerse myself more deeply in Filipino culture, So I'm trying to justify my actions and behaviors, but you get the point. You get the point. All right. Well, today, my friends, we're talking about an amazing saint whose notoriety, seems to be growing year after year. I'm talking about the Native American saint, Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, who's a virgin, and her feast day is today. So, I don't think I've ever talked about her before. She's a wonderful saint. We're going to talk a little bit about her life today and a little bit about her influence as well. And would love to hear from you if you have a particular devotion to Saint Kateri. In fact, Saint Kateri is my oldest daughter's confirmation saint name, right? Kateri Tekakwitha. Would love to hear from you. Send us an email today, my friends, beacon@EWTN.com. And of course, so grateful to have an amazing saint like Saint Kateri. Again, crossing cultures here to show the wonderful, true diversity in the church, by having this amazing Native American saint. But I'm also grateful for all the people that bring you this show each and every day. The people that you don't see who work behind the scenes. I'm talking about Vanessa Sanchez, who screens your calls, Michael McCall, who does social media, and of course, Ace McKay. Ace, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. I don't like to call them cheat days. I like to call them treat days.
Treat days. There
Treat
you go. I
days.
like that better.
Because
I
even
like
I've
that better.
heard, because over the years of doing radio, I've had like health food experts and, nutritionists and, workout gurus on my shows. And they've all equally said, unbeknownst to each other, that you have to have that one treat day. You have to give yourself a day like, okay, today I can relax it. Because again, like you said, you're not going to, undo, 6 days or months of hard work and dedication and discipline within one day, but it's having like just those flavors the one day so that at some point you don't gorge and then it becomes a 2-3 day span. So if experts in the field say, yes, give yourself, even like when it's a holiday, like a Thanksgiving or a 4th of July or whatever, they're like, give yourself the day, eat what you want. And, then tomorrow you're back on whatever plan or routines that you like to have. So I think it's something we all can enjoy. It's summer too. My wife's like, hey, what if let's go. Okay. I know it's not a Friday. I don't care. Come on, let's go. But again, knowing, okay, if I'm having my treat day because of a special day, then when treat day normally comes up, then I'm just on my normal routine.
Yeah, exactly. And I've allowed myself those kinds of days as well. And you're right. I mean, it's not like a thing where, because the fear is always like, okay, if I have this one day, it's going to start like I'm going to start spiraling and I'm going to start like this erosion and go back to the old patterns and things like that. But I found now that that's not the case. I mean, in fact, even like when I have some sugar things, although I don't really do much sugar like sodas. I
Yeah.
try to do like no sugar sodas or Zevia,
Yep.
which is kind of a natural soda, those kind of things. So when I do eat something sweet, and I haven't had desserts in a long, long time, but when I do eat something sweet, it's like wow, you can
Too
actually
much.
taste the difference. Yeah, it's just too much.
Yeah.
And so if I indulge in something, it'll be like fried foods, because typically I don't eat a lot of fried foods because of the breading
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. It's just too many carbs. But like lumpia, is one of my favorites. So they're kind of like the Filipino version of an egg roll.
Yeah.
The lumpia or a pancit, which is like a noodle dish, or adobo, which is like a beef or like you can do beef or chicken adobo,
Yeah.
and things like that. And I mean, that's just the stuff. And going to Jollibee one day, or something like that. And just, I mean, that's all part of it. And like I said, it's I've gone too far now to turn back. So yeah, we should allow ourselves time. And I think it's a great lesson in life too.
Mm-hmm.
Allow ourselves some time to have fun,
Sure.
in life, because sometimes we got the mortgage and we got the kids and we got school and we got our work and we got our marriage, we got all this stuff, and sometimes we forget to have fun,
Mm-hmm.
So that should definitely be a part of a balanced life.
Yeah, one of the things my wife laughs at me about is that I will look at like a serving size. So if it's like my love of cherry Pop Tarts, if it's for two, if it's
Oh, that's right, you're the cherry man.
I am. So if it's like 320 calories for two of them, I just get out a Ziploc bag and put one in there for later, eat just one, and then it curbs, my addiction to them a little bit. Addiction is probably the wrong term, but it like the foot, like, man, I really could go for a Pop-Tart. I eat the one, then it makes the box, which is typically only 3 servings, it makes the box last longer, and then I can enjoy the treat, and it's guilt-free. So she's like, why don't you just eat them both? I'm like, no. So yeah, it's the little nuances that make me happy.
Yeah, that's true. And one of the things I haven't been counting calories at all.
Yeah.
I just try to keep the carb count to a certain level,
Mm-hmm.
and that's basically what and then of course the macros with fats and um, protein, trying to get that balance right. But that's basically all I do is just keep it real simple.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, I think we allow ourselves. And speaking of pie, I love cherries too, and I think apple pie and cherry pie are my two favorites. You know, I used to love chocolate cream pie and things like that, but now it's just, I think apple of the fruit pies, I should say, and I love blueberries, I do, but not blueberry pie,
right,
per se. I don't know why that is.
Well, and next time you come to town, we're going to go to Mama Sue's, which is a local place that's like, makes them like Grandma used to make them. And they're amazing.
Oh, yeah.
They have a cherry cheesecake fried apple or fried pie. And like, I eat like 2 in the car. I'm like, it's treat day. Here we go.
Oh, that's awesome. Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, who we're talking about today on her feast day, would love to hear from you. Send us an email today, my friends. beacon@EWTN.com.
Got the tribals.
Oh, yeah. Working those toms, man. Love that.
My favorite thing to say when I'm on stage with a band is I'll go, all right, what you going to give me? And then whoever's going to start the song, you don't know what's coming. So you're like, all right, and then you just feel it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of songs that have more of a Native American kind of feel musically. I know there's White Man by Queen.
Yeah.
Off of Day at the Races. I'm trying to think of some other songs that kind of have that kind of feel. I can't think of any at the top of my head, but again, great way to utilize cross-culturally.
Yeah.
Bringing in influences like by the way, I mentioned I saw that Zeppelin documentary, and it was really interesting. Really, really interesting to hear how. Yeah, it was very, very interesting. And you're right. I love John Paul Jones. He was playing in church.
Yeah. He liked the priest, so I'm going to stick around a little bit.
Yeah, and you can hear that influence of some of their definitely in the music. His background. I didn't realize he had that kind of background as well. Obviously, I've seen him playing keyboards, but didn't know he had that kind of church organ background.
Yeah.
So now it makes a lot more sense when you hear a Zeppelin song with the organ in it. It's like, okay, that's John Paul Jones' influence in the band.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, I'm Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, listening to Beacon of Truth. And today is the feast day of that great Native American saint, Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, who is a virgin. We'll hear more about her story and her influence in our lives today. Great saint, who's I think her popularity is growing even more now as we become more aware of Native American issues. And we have really a woman who's an exemplar, of how to live our faith, even in the midst of adversity and trial. What a beautiful example. And of course, would love to hear from you today, my friends. Send us an email, beacon@EWTN.com.
Remember, a great way for us to stay connected, especially as we go through the Holy Mass together, is with the Mass email. You can sign up for that easily at EWTN.com. That way, when you, of course, attend Holy Sacrifice of the Mass with us each and every morning, 8 Eastern here on EWTN Radio, you have your companion. You know the readings, kind of where things are going, and then you can participate as well. So go to EWTN.com and click subscribe.
All right, my friends, it is now time for the Souful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Souful Psalms is we take one of the Psalms from the Sefer Telachim, or the Book of Sung Praises, the Jewish hymnal, liturgical hymnal, which we also utilize in every holy sacrifice of the Mass, and we connect that psalm to your everyday lived experience. Well, today we're continuing our look through Psalm 18. Psalm 18 is a very long psalm. Written by David, obviously. It's in Book 1 of the Psalms, Psalms 1 to 41. All the Psalms in Book 1 attributed to David. Now, the prescript or the superscript of this psalm is very long. So I'm just going to just read it here in English. Now we're going to be picking up at verse 12, but just to give you the context here, it says, "For the choir master of David, the servant of the Lord, who spoke the words of this canticle to the Lord, when he had been freed from the power of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said," and then the psalm starts. Right? So this verse 1 and 2 are basically just the prescript or the superscript of Psalm 18. Now, obviously, we have the proper context now. This is right at the end of 1 Samuel, the last couple of chapters, chapters 24, 25, where he spared, David had a chance to take Saul's life, but instead spared Saul. And because he spared Saul's life, Saul ended the persecution of David. And so in thanksgiving to God, he wrote this psalm. And I love the way this psalm starts off. "I love you, Lord, my strength. O Lord, my rock, my fortress, my Savior." Right? I mean, because David has gotten through the persecution, fearing for his life for such a long period of time. But now he's come through on the other side. God has delivered his salvation to David, his servant. And so now, freed from all of that, David can now fully become the leader, the king, the man who God created and calls him to be. And so he's rejoicing in the Lord. So we're picking up today at verse 12. So you have your Bibles, Psalm 18, verse 12. And so what David does here, he's so joyful. He's talking about how God has entered into the life of the Jewish people, how he entered into salvation history to bring salvation to his people. So I love this. David's not just thinking about himself. Look what the Lord did for me. He's showing this is a reflection what God has done in my life. This is a reflection of what God has done for his people, Israel. And so, again, using images from nature, he's using the waves of death, the torrents of destruction, the earth reeled and rocked. Again, using images from nature and from the created world, created reality, in order to show forth the power of God working through nature, through a people, and through him as king, well, as the future king. Right? So verse 12. "He made the darkness his covering, the dark waters of the cloud his tent." So again, we've talked before about the idea of the firmament, or the different heavens, the levels of heaven. We have the sky and the clouds. That's one level of heaven being separated by a firmament, which separates the first heaven from the second heaven, which is the outer space, the stars, the comets, the sun, the moon, and all of that, which is separated by another firmament, which separates the third heaven, or the place where God dwells and resides, right? And so here he's talking about the first heaven. Of course, God resides in all of it, right? God is he's omnipresent in all reality. He takes up all space, all time, all at once, right? He's omnipotent and omnipresent. And so David, he says, he made the darkness his covering, the dark waters of the clouds his tent, right? The dark waters, because why? We mean dark waters of the clouds. So obviously when there's a thunderstorm and it's pouring down rain, it's dark. Those are dark clouds, right? So he's saying that the Lord is hiding, or he's shielding himself behind the covers of these dark clouds. And then it says, a brightness shone out before him with hailstones and flashes of fire, right? Because sometimes, especially when there's a tornado, there's typically hail, or a severe thunderstorm is typically hail. And of course, flashes of lightning. So David's talking about God manifesting himself through these images, right? Through the images of nature. The thunder is God's voice. God's light is shown through the lightning, and God's presence is shown through the hailstones, right? Verse 14. The Lord then thundered in the heavens, right? He thundered in the heavens. So we hear the deep, sometimes explosive sound of thunder. We know that God is present, right? That's his point here. The Most High let his voice be heard. Right? So he let his voice be heard, yes, in the thunder, but also he let his voice be heard in my own life. The way God has entered and intervened into my life. God has let me hear his voice. Right? God brought salvation into my life. And when he did that, he was speaking to me. Right? And so we hear God's voice in those beautiful moments of encounter with the living God. He let his voice be heard with hail and coals of fire. So even like a volcanic eruption, right, where it's spewing out lava and spewing out, right, the Lord is making his powerful presence known. He shot his arrow, scattered the foe, flashed his lightnings, and put them to flight. Right? So David is talking about here how God has turned back his enemies by letting his voice and his presence be known, and that his enemies fled from the voice of the Lord. But see, David's saying, I had the very opposite experience. See, when what I'm doing, I'm running toward the voice of the Lord, right? I'm opening myself to listen and running toward and responding to the voice of the Lord in my life. You know, because some people, because they're afraid of God's voice, they're not used to hearing God's voice, they're not opening themselves to God's voice, they turn and run and flee from the voice and the presence of God, right? And that's what David's saying God did for my enemies. My enemies who don't recognize the voice of God became afraid. So instead of honor, reverence, and respect, kind of filial fear, they become viscerally afraid and they run away. You know, and so that's how God turned back the enemies, by showing his presence and his might in a way that they're not familiar with, and so they turn and run in fear.
Yeah, and learning to ask God clarification of when you thought you heard from him, what was genuinely him and what was not. Because I know that's helped me to discern the difference between his voice and my own, so that if nothing else, I know what he's saying to me, but then I have a peace in moving in that direction or away from something, because that is his voice. And then people can say, well, how do you know it's God? Well, I mean, that we train our ears to hear. It's like hearing your mom's voice when it's dinner time, right? Like you're trained to that. And so you know, all right, let's go eat. So we have to know that discernment there, and just ask him, Lord, was this you, or was that my own wanting of that? And he'll help you separate the two.
Yeah, exactly right. And and they run, like I said, his enemies run from the voice of the Lord because they don't recognize the voice of God in their life. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's something we should always be striving to do, to be attentive, to listen more deeply to God speaking to us. What does that voice sound like? Mm-hmm. Right? And now David is describing this as thunder and lightning and hail and flames of fire, you know, a very powerful presence of God. Yeah. And the Lord can also work powerfully in our lives as well if we give him the room and we give him the space and we have the desire to allow him in. So we're not afraid. In fact, we respond to God's presence with love and with fidelity to his voice.
I love that when you said give him the room, like, you know, you walk into all right, the Lord has the floor, you know, it's like, you know, just giving him plenty of space so that you've got, it's like, you know, writing in the margins of your Bible, right? It's like the wider the margins, the more room to write what he's saying to you.
Yeah, exactly. And responding to that, right? So we write it down and we meditate on it and then we respond. Beautiful. Yeah. All right, today's the feast day of Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, the great Native American saint, virgin. We're going to talk about her and her influence. Send us an email, beacon@EWTN.com.
Makes your hair and back of your neck stand up.
Oh yeah, that's a great riff. Yeah.
I always like to predict. Yeah, I like to predict the key change when it comes. Here comes
Yeah. Oh, that is very cool. Yeah.
If I use ringtones, that might be one of them.
Yeah, and I love the heaviness of the guitar there. And sometimes, in order to get that heavy sound, they tune down.
Yeah.
You know, so some songs like Muse often do a drop D tuning, but they just tune down the low E string.
Yeah.
But others like Slipknot or what's the other
Korn,
one
maybe?
I'm thinking about Korn, Lamb of God. You know, Mastodon. Bands like that will tune the entire guitar down like a whole step.
Yeah.
And so you're really getting a heaviness or a chunkiness there from that lower register to get that to really get that deep sound. And what's the another not Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down will also do that as well. Tune down a lot to get that sound. So love that. That. And see, that's why you have to have multiple guitars.
Right.
Because what you don't want to do is spend time. Oh, I got to tune down all these strings again. No, just pick up a guitar that's already tuned to that lower register and just start playing.
You just gave every guitar player an excuse to go buy another guitar today. Honey, Deacon Harold said I needed two.
See, I'm telling you, right? Blame me. You know, that's it. I have no problem with that. Oh, boy. I'm Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers. You're listening to Beacon of Truth. And today is the feast day of the great Native American saint, Saint Kateri Tekakwitha. So we're going to talk about her today, a little bit about her influence in the life of the church today. And, of course, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, beacon@EWTN.com.
Well, of course, we talk about music on this show on a regular basis, but we go a little deeper on our playlist editions, and now it is its own podcast. Beacon of Truth playlist streaming anywhere that you like to stream podcast, Spotify, Apple, so forth, or just go to Podcast Central, EWTN.com/podcast. We've done songs like Stairway to Heaven, Are You Gonna Go My Way, I Won't Hold Back. Like, the list is on and on. So check them out, and it's taking these secular songs and giving it a biblical perspective so that we can better understand it and how it applies in our filter, and then we can hopefully change that filter a little bit. But check it out, Beacon of Truth playlist streaming at Podcast Central, EWTN.com/podcast.
All right, very good. Well, today again is the feast day of Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, the great Native American saint. And so we're going to talk a little bit about her life and her influence in the life of the church and in our lives today. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, beacon@EWTN.com. So Saint Kateri Tekakwitha was the first Native American saint, and she was the daughter of a pagan Mohawk chief and a Christian Algonquin mother. So the Mohawks and the Algonquins were two of the Native American tribes. And so obviously the mother was a Christian, which means that the mother or the Algonquins were already evangelized by some of those great Jesuit saints who became martyrs, right? I'm talking about St. Francis Xavier and a number of others as well. So obviously St. Kateri learned about her faith from her mom, right? And so father was pagan, mom was Christian. And so her mom, I'm sure, shared her faith in God with her daughter. And so obviously back in those days, life was hard in general, but particularly for Native Americans, life was particularly challenging. And so Kateri was met with many hardships as she was growing up. She was orphaned at the age of 4, and she also had smallpox, and the effects of smallpox left her disfigured and partially blind for the rest of her life. And so we right away we can relate to her. So how so? So first of all, she learned her faith from her mother, right? And so parents are the primary educators of the faith to their children. So And what I mean by that is, I know that some parents, when we hear things like that, we're challenged. Well, I don't know a lot about the faith. I mean, I'm not a Catholic apologist. I mean, I just maybe know some basic things, but what can I possibly teach my child about the faith? Well, let's send them to Catholic school or confirmation class or youth group. They'll teach them about their faith. That's not what I'm talking about here. I think the beautiful thing that Saint Kateri learned, even again by the age of 4, when she lost both of her parents, I'm sure it's some kind of fight either with another tribe or with some of the settlers that were moving into the area at that time. However, she lost her parents. That the mom's lived example was what the young Kateri picked up on. The lived witness and example. So yeah, we may not know a whole lot about the faith, but how we live that faith, how we witness to the faith. And that was something, in fact, this is very close to me because this is exactly my experience with my mother. My mother was definitely not a scholar of the faith. She couldn't explain, why we believe in the Trinity and things like that. Well, that's just what we do because we're Catholics, would probably be her response. But her example and her witness, how she sacrificed for the 4 of us kids, so we can get a Catholic education, all the overtime that she had to work, how tired she looked all the time, how she had to go to work with holes in her shoes and runs in her stockings because that money had to be spent for things that we needed, the kids. So I saw and lived through my experience of my mother the meaning of sacrifice, the living the words of Jesus, not just teaching them to us so they become like a subject in school, but something that I saw and with my own eyes, I experienced in my own life, and that her teaching in that way spoke more powerfully to me than anything she could have taught us with her own mouth or any the limited knowledge that she had of the faith. Her actions and experience spoke louder than her words, and I think that's the same experience of Saint Kateri, and that it should be an inspiration for all of us as parents that we can we have to live our faith, and that's the witness that we give to our children. Not so much what we say, but how we do and how we live, so they can see that and say, this is what it means to be a Catholic. This is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Not just the stuff I'm learning in school or in youth group, but how my parents are living this reality out every day. And so they'll come to understand if it's important for them, it's also important for me, right? And we also see here that her mother was influenced by missionaries, right? So we need to be a missionary people. We have my goodness, we have a missionary pope right now, Pope Leo, who was a missionary, lived in South America most of his life, serving the people there as an Augustinian priest and bishop, before Pope Francis of recent memory appointed him a cardinal and brought him to the Vatican to work in the congregation for bishops. So but we see that missionary influence. We need to be a missionary church, a missionary people, to go out and be witnesses of God's love to others, right? Because we see the ripple effects. The missionaries came, they taught the Native Americans. They in Saint Kateri's case, the mother took hold of the faith and passed it down to her daughter, right? So we see this generational influence of faith in the lives of the people that the missionaries came to teach about what it means to have a deep, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. Right? And we also see that just like in real life, she was burdened and riddled with hardships, right? So hers were well, first of all, losing her parents at such a tender age, but also being physically disfigured by smallpox, and being blind. These are challenges. I mean, think about it. As a kid, kids will mock you because they're just cruel that way. Mock you, make fun of you because of a physical or mental disability or ailment that you might be suffering. So I can imagine the teasing that she got because, again, through no fault of her own, had to deal with these physical ailments. She was, and in addition to all of that, she was persecuted in her village by members of her own tribe because of her faith in Jesus. And so she decided to leave her tribe and to live at the St. Francis Xavier Mission near Montreal. So again, we see the influence of St. Francis Xavier and the other Jesuits who came over to minister